I just saw a mum go to grab it to give it to her child in a pushchair. I literally had to run after them and like grab the balloon out of the child's hand and say, "You can't have it."
We're here today with Emily Clayton, the lovely fundraising director from Campaign Against Living Miserably. And Emily is going to talk to us today about the fantastic campaign that they ran, Missed Birthdays, which was a kind of live installation in September 9th to September the 11th in Westfield in Shepherd's Bush. Fabulous. Okay, so I saw a lot of content about missed birthdays on my social media, and I was really kind of intrigued about the campaign, how it had come about. It looked visually stunning, really cool, and then wanted to sort of catch up with Emily and see sort of from a sort of organizational perspective, and I guess from a logistical perspective, how it went. So Emily has very kindly agreed to talk to us today about the campaign. So got quite a few questions that I will just run through and ask you about, and let's go for it. So Emily, first of all, what inspired the Missed Birthdays campaign and how did it come about?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, it's the brilliant work of our creative agency and partners at Adam and Eve, who have been working with us for way before I've been at Calm, for quite a few years now. And they were also the creators behind The Last Photo and Project 84. We kind of do big campaigns in 2-year cycles. So they've worked across those. So they've got, they're really close to us. They're really close to the cause. They understand the reason why we exist, our mission, our vision, all that kind of thing. So, the kind of inspiration came from them really understanding what we're here to do and what our mission is at the moment. But I guess a bit more detail on that it really came from the tragic stats from the ONS that show that 6,929 young people have died by suicide in the last decade. And they are, in our opinion, all preventable deaths, which might be a bit difficult for some people to sort of get their head round. And it's not to say that people could have done anything differently, but there's the feeling of kind of lost potential in those young people who have died when we know that there's so much that we can be doing around suicide to prevent those deaths. So it really came from those really tragic statistics. Suicide is now the most common death for those people under 34, which is just something that we absolutely have to do something about.
And do you think that there's a sort of general recognition within the public that that is the case around sort of suicide being so prevalent for people under the age of 34, the most kind of prevalent way of them dying? Do you think there's that recognition?
So that was one of our campaign objectives actually, was to raise awareness of those stats and really help people understand that, this is the most common cause of death. Like, it's not car accidents, it's not alcohol abuse or drug use and all of those awful things that do happen as well. The fact that it's suicide for young people, and that is the fastest growing kind of cohort of people that are taking their own lives now. That is absolutely part of the campaign objectives, was to bring that into the light a bit more, really. And that's why I think that the number itself, 6,929, which we said a lot during those weeks, like, that it is a huge number, but seeing that in essentially in balloon form really, really brought that to life. And I know one of the things that we all felt when we actually saw the installation is we kind of thought the mass of all of those balloons together was going to be the really striking thing, but actually seeing each of those balloons as it like individually, that certainly for me, and I know for a lot of other people, was the bit that really kind of hit home. That each one of the balloons, when it was kind of moving in its own way, it really showed that was representing a different individual, which really brought it home.
Yeah, absolutely. And how did the creative team approach sort of translating such a sensitive and personal topic into a campaign for a much wider audience?
Yeah. So again, from working with us for a number of years and from the brilliant minds that are at Adam and Eve, they worked really closely with our head of services, our director of services, Wendy, who is, super qualified in all of this world. So there was a lot around I guess one of the things that we wanted to be really sensitive about was the safeguarding and the duty of care for the families that were involved directly in the campaign, but also, you know, the wider group of people who are one of the families that have lost one of these numbers.
Mm,
So really working with our services team, we also partnered with South Space, which is a kind of therapy service that we offer out, so that we really made sure that people were being kind of well looked after. We
mm,
obviously used real families and their real stories as part of the campaign. So we had that kind of lived experience to check in
mm,
on throughout the whole development of the campaign, to make sure that we were sensitively telling their stories in the right way, and that when the campaign came together, it kind of, you know, struck the right note with all of those peoples. And I guess the balloon was the symbol really that we wanted to pull out from this. And I think that, you know, people recognize a balloon as a symbol of celebration and of hope, especially in the sense of a birthday. So using that as a symbol, but still bringing out the real life story that is behind the balloon, was our way of kind of still having that, like, I guess, shocking moment, so that it really
mm.
made people stop in their tracks, but also doing it in a kind of sensitive way with a symbol, really.
Yeah. Fabulous. Yeah, I can imagine like the co-creation aspect of this was really important. Were they involved throughout the kind of development of the campaign, the sort of families that you were telling the stories of?
The idea, well, the number, obviously, the number was the number that came
Mm,
from ONS stats. The idea was developed from that, and then the kind of the outreach to families came early on in the campaign, and then yeah, they were very much part of it. But one of the bits that, you know, if you didn't go and see it, you wouldn't have known, is when you walked through the tunnel of the balloons. We had the voice notes playing from the different family members or friends of some of the kind of key case study stories that we
right.
heroed in the campaign. So
Mm,
yeah, they were very much part of that, and we had so many of the families coming down to the installation and, like, you know, hearing their voice note and
mm,
dedicating one of the balloons and things like that. So it was, I mean,
mm,
hugely emotional. But yeah, the families were just incredible. And I guess the overarching thing that came from them all is that if they could do this and they could raise awareness and also help us with the care kit, then they,
mm.
you know, it gave them something that made them feel like they were hopefully stopping somebody else having to go through the same.
Yeah, it sounds very kind of emotional, quite moving. It must have been
Yeah,
for everyone.
yeah, very much. Yeah.
Um, so logistically, it looked like quite an undertaking in terms of that number of balloons and all those sort of things. What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced in the development and execution of this, and what kind of lessons did you learn that you're able to share?
There's so much logistics involved with balloons that I don't think any of us would have ever thought about. And again, you know, this was very much the brilliance of lots of our partners who actually built the installation and brought that all together. And even finding the space at Westfield,
Mm,
I think, again, the idea was developed before we knew where we were going to do it. And the fact that it was at Westfield, and you have the kind of the two floors that you could see the balloons from the top, you could see the balloons walking through, you could see the balloons on all different levels. I mean, brilliantly stars aligned, because I think I can't imagine what it would have looked like at somewhere that didn't have that same kind of layout. So that
yeah.
made it work absolutely brilliantly. But the balloons, I mean, we had a team of people for the whole installation. Um, and like we were kind of there as volunteers, largely to help speak to people and to tell them a bit more about it. But there was quite a lot of balloon logistics as well, including, I think there was one moment where one of the balloons had fallen down. Like they are attached with string in the normal way that you would kind of see balloons. And I just saw a mum go to grab it to give it to her child in a pushchair. I literally had to run after them and, like, grab the balloon out of the child's hand and say, "You can't have it."
Oh
So yeah,
dear.
there was a lot more in the balloons than we would have anticipated. We also, it was important to us that we made sure that it was all as sustainable as possible.
Mm,
So we were able to find a charity who basically take these balloons and use them for different purposes with children. So,
mm.
all of that was stuff that we had to consider throughout it. So yeah, there was a lot more talk about balloons than I think we would have anticipated at the start.
I can imagine. I take it you didn't blow them all up individually yourselves?
They were blown up
They were,
individually.
they were
We,
blown.
yeah, but yeah, it was all done through, the installation team that
Right.
managed it all. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's quite
I
amazing.
think I haven't seen it yet actually, but I think somewhere there is a bit of a time lapse of the whole thing, being built. So I
Yeah.
mean, the team went in on the maybe even the Saturday night, or certainly
Mhm.
it was at least by the Sunday morning, ready for it to be open on the Monday morning.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
And what's the sort of moment from the project that stands out most to you?
Um, I think it was when I was in Westfield and this wonderful woman came over. She was in tears and she had travelled up that morning from Maidstone, having seen it on This Morning. So yeah, it was brilliantly televised
Mm,
across This Morning for the 3 days. And she'd seen it on there and said she just had to come up and see it in real life. And she actually volunteers for the Samaritans
right.
because she kind of understands what we're doing and why we're doing it. But seeing her um, just feel that moved that she had to come and see it in real life, and she stood and chatted to us for a really long time. And then she said she wanted to go around all of the different parts of Westfield to see it from different angles.
Mm, mm.
Yeah, that's probably the bit that stood out the most.
Amazing. It's amazing to make such kind of impact on just one person is always great, you
I
know.
couldn't believe how many people had said they saw it on This Morning and then they decided they had to come up and see it.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's sort of looking at the project externally, you're always sort of looking at something again, that's really good. And you never quite understand how many partners have been
Yeah.
involved. It's always a lot more than you think. So you look at it and go, oh, look, there's a campaign by Calm. And then you go, okay, so Iceland Foods are involved, obviously
Yeah.
Westfield are involved. It really was a kind of a partnership project, and all the best projects always are loads of different sort of different stakeholders. So can you tell us a little bit about the partnership dynamics? Was that organic, or did you plan all of the partners, and what was the breadth of the partnership?
I would say organic-ish, and planned-ish. So,
Yeah.
in the development of it over quite a number of months, as we started to I guess really move into understanding what it was going to look like and finding the venues and the costs, etc. We recognised that we were going to need to get some funding for it to be able to do it as best as we can. So we were really lucky to have Iceland Food Charitable Foundation as one of our partners anyway, and we knew that youth suicide is a real kind of passion point for them. It's something that they've
Right.
talked about often as we've moved into our partnership with them. So they were our first ask to basically be to help us with it and be able to fund part of the campaign. In fact, the most part of the campaign. And they brilliantly said yes. So that bit that then it's not something that we've really done to that scale before. We haven't really had a kind of a sponsor of anything like that, so there was a lot that we learned along the way with that. And it's yeah, it was brilliant to have them. We absolutely would not have been able to do it without them, but it meant that a few different things kind of organically fell out of that, I suppose. And the ways we went with it, and just in terms of having a sponsor on there, that changes the dynamics of some of the pro bono media that
Yeah.
we get. And just having that logo placement, etc., it meant that we had to change some things along the way, but it also meant that it unlocked a lot of things for us along the way as well, not just in terms of the funding, but
Mm.
the amount Iceland wanted to promote it on their channels, the amount they wanted to talk about it. So yeah, there was a lot that kind of came from that partnership.
Amazing. Yeah. And what were the overall objectives for something like this? So it's obviously kind of, an experiential campaign,
Yeah.
and there could potentially be lots of objectives. If you can tell us a little bit specifically about what you were trying to achieve through this campaign.
Yeah, sure. So I guess it's worth mentioning that this was part one of sort of a three-part campaign. We have a program of work that we're internally calling Firebreak. So this was part one. We are currently very busy working on part two, which will be out at the end of January. And then that will lead into kind of the final part of this Firebreak program. And the reason it's called Firebreak is because we are trying to put a stop to young people thinking that suicide is an option for them. We want to give them lots of different ways of staying and tools to help them realize that there's lots of other things that they should be doing. So the objectives of this first part were kind of twofold. There was, as mentioned at the start, raising the awareness of the problem and the statistics around the rising rates of youth suicide and it being the biggest cause of death for under 35-year-olds. Then the secondary to that was helping people understand that Calm have solutions and Calm have tools for that. So I guess one of the things that we've learned from previous campaigns, particularly with the last photo, which was, a hugely brilliant and really emotive campaign, we did some system one testing on it, and ultimately people are left feeling like sad, which that was absolutely what that campaign, well, not what it was there to do, but that
Yeah,
was, it was there again to raise awareness and to
yeah,
help people understand. What we wanted to do with this is give people an action, give people a solution to seeing this heartbreaking statistics and everything that goes with it. So there is understand the scale of the problem and then understand what role you can take within that, and that's where the Calm Care Kit came in.
yeah,
So the care kit then itself had we had our own objectives around the kind of usage and engagement, etc., of care kit as a result. So the care kit is a online tool that has lots of information to help a trusted adult, as we're calling them, to be able to reach in and start conversations and really check in with young people in their lives. We absolutely developed an MVP version of it to go alongside this first part of the campaign. So the idea being that we could launch the campaign and have somewhere we could point people rather than them just
yeah,
feeling the kind of despair of those stats. We wanted to point them to this is it, this is what Calm can do to help, and this is what you can do to help. As that was MVP version, we had some, objectives around number of visitors, engagement on site, but ultimately it was to then learn how we could continue developing that product to make sure that we were making it into a really kind of well-used digital scalable tool for people at Calm. So we are, as we move into this second phase, most of the development has been on the Calm Care Kit, which we're
yeah.
working on, and then the next phase of the campaign will be really pushing people back to that as well, with everything that we've learned from the kind of the visitors and the users that we've had from the first version.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. Yeah, I like the idea of kind of the Calm kit as the MVP on the first stage and then sort of ramping that up at the second. That seems like a really good plan.
Yeah.
In terms of just organizationally, so I think a lot of people would perhaps, well, looking at it externally, a lot of people would say that one of the reasons that sort of suicide of young people is quite prevalent at the moment is down to social media. And
Mm.
I know Australia has recently passed some legislation around banning social media for under 16s. I think there's several viewpoints on that. Some people think that's a good thing. Other people, I've read some stuff around not being a good, not necessarily a good point of view. And there's nuance to all of these sorts of issues. Organizationally, like, what's your sort of standpoint on social media and how it leads to some of these sort of suicides?
Yeah, it's a really tricky one because social media, absolutely all of those points I think are valid, and it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in Australia. And I've
Mm,
just seen actually, I saw advertised last night a program on Channel 4 that starts this week about a school that has did a 21-day phone ban. So
yeah.
I think that's going to be really interesting to see.
Mm,
But ultimately, social media is also how people know about Calm. It's how we're able to push the Calm Care Kit. It's how we're
yeah.
able to, tell people about missed birthdays in the campaign. So Yeah, it's a difficult one to have like one stance on,
Yeah.
but what we have done and what we have got in the care kit and in other tools is so words that young people might use
Mm.
to disguise the fact that they're talking about suicide. So there's different words that young people have created so that they
Yeah.
can look for content, so that they can talk about it in groups, etc., on social media without it being flagged. We know some of those, and that's some of the stuff that we will include in the care kit to help a
Yeah.
trusted adult to kind of just understand what is happening out there and to have those right conversations and to open it up. But we don't have a strict kind of
Mm.
stance on it because it is so nuanced, and there's so much good on social media as well as there being some nasty stuff as well. But I think there's loads that's being done to try and make it safer and keep it better. And I guess really our stance is more around helping adults open up conversations and ask the young people in their lives the right question so that they can understand, what they might be doing with or without social media.
Okay, so thinking about the results of the sort of campaign, are you happy with the impact it made? Do you have a kind of headline figure of the number of people it reached? Like, how have the results been? And I suppose also, has there been anything surprising in there?
So as I said, this is part one of the kind of the three-part campaign. We have done an evaluation at this point, and that has been really, really useful to do because there is definitely stuff that we can be building on for the next two parts of the campaign. And I think one of the other things that came out quite clearly in the evaluation is that people do want much clearer actions to take. There's a
Yeah.
lot of feedback around people wanting to spot the signs, which is a really tricky one because there aren't always signs, or often you can find that someone who is having suicidal thoughts or have made a plan to take their own life, as per the last photo, can just seem completely happy and content, and that is possibly because they think they've made their plan. So being able to answer that kind of question isn't something that we can just do. So there's
Yeah.
definitely more we need to build into our tools and our response to that campaign to kind of bring that out more, but then point people to where those actions are. Calm care kit, which certainly for me was the bit that I was really wanting to focus in on. We had really great engagement at the time of the campaign. We had about 12,000 visitors to the site. We at the time we set up a email journey, so we really wanted to capture people's data at that point so that we could take them on a 4-part journey of the care kit, but also get more insight to be able to build the care kit from there. And we had about 6,500 people sign up for that email journey, which
Okay.
is a really good number for us. The engagement time was good on the site, peaking at about 1 minute 20 seconds, I think. So all of that was some really good stuff for us to build on. But what we have seen is post-campaign, we haven't been able to maintain that, which we weren't expecting to. We haven't been able to maintain that kind of traffic and that re-engagement of the care kit. So that's all stuff that we're really putting at the forefront of the next part of the campaign.
Fab, brilliant. Yeah, I guess it's a kind of evolutionary journey, and as you sort of stressed, it's a multi kind of intervention campaign. So there'll be other iterations coming soon with that focus on the care kit.
Yeah.
In terms of thinking about your biggest learning from this campaign, or if there's anything that you do differently, is there anything you can share on that front?
There's always stuff that I would do differently, and I think that we would all do differently. I guess the main thing is it took more capacity than I think we had planned for, not just in terms of, hours and number of staff, etc., but the emotional toil of it, like it was really hard. We found that from ourselves internally, we found that from Adam and Eve, from, all of the partners that brilliantly got involved. I
Yeah.
think being stood in Westfield and seeing someone's realization on their face about what the campaign was about and the emotion that follows is it, that's kind of what we wanted it to do, but actually seeing that time and time again was really
Yeah.
heavy stuff. And we are a suicide prevention charity. We deal
Mm.
with this and we talk about this all of the time, but it was still, I think because it was about young people, it was hard, and the capacity around that was really hard. We wanted to launch this around World Suicide Prevention Day, and just by sheer I don't know, I can't decide whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but there's so much goes on for Calm in September. It is by far our busiest month.
Fabulous. Okay, that was a really illuminating conversation, and thank you so much for your time today, Emily.
Thank you. It's been great.